Hey guys and girls and horror fans, welcome back to Board Now's channel. I'm Rachel McDonald, guest starring on another movie review. So happy October. We are going through all of our Halloweeny movies, and today we're doing a movie that Keith hasn't seen before, which is why I'm introducing the video this time around. We are going to be reviewing the 2014 film What We Do in the Shadows. So this is a New Zealand film, very close to Australia here. This was co-written and co-directed by Taika Waititi. Apologies if I do not pronounce that correctly. It's a very hard name. And also Jermaine Clement. And they are two Aussie actors/directors. So this is kind of a mockumentary and a bit of a parody/satire on the vampire drama. So a lot of you probably do know that it did become a TV series, which was American produced, but this was where it all originated from. So basically we have 4 vampires who live in a house in New Zealand, and they have granted access to a documentary crew to follow them around in the lead up to this big ball that they attend every few years. So basically we get, a lot of play on vampire tropes, vampire cliches. Each of the vampires has their own personality, has their own kind of homage that they're supposed to be a nod to. And it basically just follows them around for several weeks. We get to see them on their adventures. We get to see them turn a new vampire and see how that turns out. And then it all culminates in the big ball at the end. So like I said at the beginning, Keith hasn't seen this movie, but I have before. So given that it was his first time watching, Keith, what did you think of this film?
Yeah, and also, I don't know if you knew this, but it started out as a short movie as well.
Yes, it did.
Like a decade before. So this was that. So yeah, first time watch. I have seen the TV show. We've discussed this off air, and I'm a big fan of the TV show. So yeah, this was fun. This was overall, I enjoyed this quite a bit. It was a little different. Like, I didn't think the humor was that different from the TV show, but it was a little bit. Like, it did play a bit more into the deadpan sort of humor, and it was obviously a bit more of maybe a niche style humor. And I know there's 1 or 2 things changed up, because there's no female vampire in this, like the main one,
not in this
like the TV show. So it doesn't quite match up, but you can sort of see that they did base the characters in the TV show, at least 2 of them, on like the ones in this film. And but they do have a female familiar in the film, and you also get introduced to this one who's the basis for the Colin Robinson character in the TV show. The one who's like the computer nerd, because the whole thing with Colin Robinson is like he's boring, and that's how he because he's actually a vampire in the show, but like that's how he drains people of his blood, of their bloody balls, basically. So I'm guessing, Stu was meant to be the model that he was based on. You don't really like the TV show, and I just wonder if it's that thing of watching it the way round you did, where you'd seen this first.
Possibly, yeah.
I enjoyed this, but I don't think it's as good as the TV show. But then, because I've watched it that way round, it is hard to imagine, like. And maybe that's just a factor. I think overall, I think the characters are better in the TV show, and I think that's what makes it funny. Because, like, to use an example, I think Matt Berry, who's in the TV show, who plays Laszlo, I think is hilarious. Like, just his charisma and his whole thing where he thinks he's a rock star, but he's not, I think is what makes that character really funny. And yeah, just his delivery of like dialogues. Whereas in this, you have a much more like that character is I think his name's Vlad, isn't it? But like
Vlad the Poker.
Yeah, I think again, it's a much more deadpan sort of character, and I think he almost seems like he's modelled on Nick Cave, that sort of like character, like almost if Nick Cave was like a vampire. But I think my favourite out of them was Vigo. Maybe I thought he was.
Yes, everyone loves Vigo because he's the one played by Taika, and he's like the main character and the point of view vampire kind of. So he's very lovable.
Yeah, like I was laughing at his stuff pretty much from the get-go, like his delivery of stuff. The show is you will get a lot of the same plots in the first series as you see in this film. And I think, overall, I think the reason I prefer the show is because the characters, I think, are better. And I think also maybe you can pace it better in the TV show, like in a sitcom, because I think with this, it does feel like they're running through several sketches type thing. So maybe it doesn't quite fit together as a movie, whereas... So I can see why they made it into a show, because with a show, you can kind of do different things with different episodes. So there's that, like, because I would say I really enjoyed it at the start, and then I would say there was a lull in the middle where I didn't find the middle so funny, and then it sort of picked up back at the end. But like, I know in the show they do the whole stuff with like the werewolves against the vamps, and that's a funny scene, and that's also very funny in the show, with the date when he was trying to drain the girl, and then it was like,
and he hit
an artery.
I love that scene. He's just like, shit, and he's trying to like, that was brilliant, so good. And that's what I love about this movie, and I'm guessing the TV show does it too, is it takes the absurdity of being a vampire, because when you watch Anne Rice or The Vampire Diaries or Buffy, the biting's always dramatic and sensual and sexy and like, oh, yes, like you're draining me. Whereas this shows the reality, which is what happens if you hit an artery. What happens if you, you don't know how to contain all the blood. So I thought that was really fun. I also think it's fun. And again, I'm guessing the TV show probably plays on this too. But I mentioned that each of the 4 main vampires that we meet at the beginning is supposed to be an ode to a particular vampire trope. So obviously you have Peter, who's the 8,000-year-old vampire in the basement who's supposed to be a Nosferatu, knockoff. Then you've got Vlad, who is obviously supposed to be a Dracula knockoff because he's got the long hair and the red, and he's, Vlad the Poker, and he's, he's got the accent. Taika Waititi's character, Viago, is supposed to be the Interview at the Vampire era, the dandy vampires, the gentleman. And then you've got Deacon, bloody Deacon, who is supposed to be the Lost Boys type vampire. And then Nick, the new vampire that they make, is the Twilight vampire, which obviously he does also reference, when he's out in the street and he's all like, Twilight! It's like, shut up, Nick, you're not Twilight. So I thought that was fun, a nice little ode to the vampires. I understand what you mean about it, like being like a series of sketches, but I think it works for this because obviously they say at the beginning, this is supposed to be like a mockumentary. So it's not necessarily supposed to be like a narrative movie. It's supposed to be a fake documentary. So I do think that aspect is fun. I think it's also fun the way they play on like just vampire housemates, how they have that housemate meeting at the beginning and they're trying to point out that like, the sink's full of bloody dishes from like 5 years ago, and they're like, oh, we're vampires, we don't do dishes. And then one of them's like, well, I dragged a body down the hall and it kind of picked up all the dust. So in a way, I kind of swept the hallway. And it's like, I like...
There was a line, wasn't there, something to do with next time you drain someone, like, because it
put down some newspapers.
That was a good line as well. And that's just the sort of humour they were going for, which was good.
So I like all that. And I think also, at least I find for me when I watch this, like it's funny and it's satirical, but I think they also, and again, like you said, the TV version may be better. And I suspect it's because you've got more seasons and therefore you've got more time to flesh the characters out. But I do feel like they did give the characters some heart in this, like we saw that they have genuine friendships. I love when they make Nick a vampire, he brings his friend Stu in, which Keith was talking about earlier. Now, Stu is just a regular human guy, but he comes in and he makes friends with all the vampires, and it's so cute because he's showing them like how to use the internet, how to use mobile phones, and they all just kind of fall in love with Stu. And what's really funny is the guy who plays Stu is actually not an actor. He is actually just like a tech guy who's like friends with someone. Okay. So they actually just brought him in, and he's just so lovable. And then, of course, we're going to get into some spoilers here, guys, because we got to talk about some spoilers towards the end of the movie when Stu gets attacked and they're all very upset about it. I think you really do feel the loss of their friend, and when Peter is taken out by the vampire hunter again, you feel the loss of their friend. So I think that while they do the humor very well, I think they get the more emotional side down as well. And I think you do see quite a few moments where you see the friendship between the vampires and how they coexist together and how they've been together for so long and they've formed this bond.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And our TV show has this same. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? And I love that, because I feel sometimes when spoofs or parodies or satires are made, sometimes they're made by people who hate whatever they're spoofing or parodying, and you can feel that. But I don't feel that here. When I watch this, I feel like they actually do love the vampire genre, but they also love the absurdity of the vampire genre, and they're trying to show that while still showing that they love the genre in general. And does the TV show kind of have that feel as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because one line also earlier, which was very funny, which I think just sums up the humour of both, is when he makes the comment about how the postage was too much or not enough on the coffin, so it just took ages, it took extra long to travel. That was really funny. I think that sums up. Yeah, the sort of mundanity of the humour and this idea of, almost poking fun at the sort of pitfalls that you would get if you were a vampire in reality. Yeah, that's really funny.
It is a lot of fun. Another line that Stephen and I love that just made us laugh so much when we first heard it, just because of the way that he delivers it. So when they're talking about, why do you drink virgins? Why virgins? And Vlad's like, well, I just think, if you're going to enjoy a sandwich, you would just enjoy it more if you knew no one had sex with it first. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. I would enjoy a sandwich more if I knew that no one had sex with it first. I just thought it was such a funny way to kind of portray the virgin thing. And you just, there's a lot of nice little shout outs. They make references to the Lost Boys, the how's your worms, the maggot scene from the Lost Boys, which I thought was fun. I love the scene when Nick is running through the house trying to escape them, and they all just keep popping out of different places, and they show Declan crawling towards him with no legs, and you see Vlad trying to do the cat, only he still has his own face on the cat, and that's just the funniest thing ever. And poor Nick is just running around all crazy, and I just think that's a lot of fun. You mentioned earlier the werewolves. I love the werewolf subplot. So the werewolves are led by Reese Darby, who is quite a well-known Kiwi actor. He's so funny, and I just think the little conflict that they have with the werewolves is just so well used. The way they just pop in briefly, they're not overused. I love what are we? We are werewolves, not swearwolves.
I
thought that was so fun. Or later when they're chaining themselves to trees, and he's like, a combination lock? Well, now you're not going to be able to get that off. And he's like, take your trousers off, you're going to lose. It's a perfectly good pair of trousers, you're going to lose. So I thought the werewolf stuff was really fun. Yeah, and I really like that through Nick we get to see a new vampire, and I like that they show how they turn in this one. That part where he tries to eat chips and then he just ends up puking blood for 3 straight scenes because he can't eat chips. The bat fight, so much fun. But yeah, just I think there's just a lot of fun to be had. So I'm assuming the TV show has a similar format, it's a documentary crew following the vampires around?
Yeah, and as I said, one of the main differences is you do get a female vampire, and they're a couple from years, her and the Matt Berry character, almost like a Bonnie and Clyde type thing with them. But they're very good together on the show, and as I said, the Vigo, his character, they definitely recreated him with Nandel in the show, Nandel. Because I could tell it was meant to be the same, because the voice was very similar, and that actor's hilarious. Because in the show he's the one that has the familiar tending to his
okay. Yeah.
There's a whole thing with them because the familiar wants to be turned one day, and they have quite a nice relationship in the show. But I've got to say, actually, I did enjoy the familiar in this. The
Jackie, yeah.
Yeah, like we
she
didn't
was
get
fun.
that much of her, but whenever she popped up, she was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I love her indignation when she finds out that Nick's been turned instead of her, and she's like, "Oh, it's this whole. If I had a dick, I would have been turned way before this. It's this whole big homoerotic dick biting club." And I'm like, "Yeah, sister, it really is."
Very much.
But yeah, but it's fun at the end to see her that Nick has gone and turned her. Like, I really love that she pops up at the vampire ball and she's like, "Yeah, I'm a vampire now." And then at the end, she's like, "I just feel like this is who I'm supposed to be. I'm living my best life. My husband's my familiar now." And it's like, yeah, you go, girl. And yeah, the actress is really fun, and definitely has fun with it whenever she pops up. And yeah, I thought it's well directed as well, this one. I think it's done really well, and that, like, a lot of the scenes are really fun. And again, like I said, I just really love how much they mock the vampire tropes while also showing love to them. Like, I love that the first scene is Viago trying to rise out of his coffin, and he gets stuck halfway, and he's just like, "Oh crap," and kind of, trying to get himself back up. Or, like you said, the artery scene. There's also that scene where, like, they're talking about Vlad trying to use hypnosis, and he's outside someone's window and he's like, see me now. And when the person's not looking at him, so he just hits the window and he's like, "See me
Yeah,
now."
that was
And
good. Yeah.
I just think a lot of that is just a lot of fun. Did you watch to the end of the credits?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I love that little bit that pops up at the end where they're like, "You will forget this film." And I'm
That's
like,
good.
that was fun. I thought that was really fun. Was there anything that you found that you didn't love or didn't think worked that well?
Drag in the middle a bit. Like, I didn't find the middle as funny, and I feel maybe it could just be then with deadpan humor, there are going to be some jokes that fall flat. Like, maybe you have to absolutely nail it where you get what the joke is and, like, you can see why it's funny. So maybe that's why, because it is such a deadpan movie.
Yeah.
And I think overall, although I did find at least two of the three main characters funny, like, I didn't really find Vlad that funny, apart from on the odd occasion. But like, the other two I did find quite funny. And I sort of warmed to the guy that they introduced over time.
Nick takes a bit of getting used to.
Maybe it's just impossible to distance it from the show, because I think the characters are better in the show, and that's makes
understandable.
Yeah.
No,
whereas I can understand the reverse as well if you saw this first.
Humor in the show is a little bit more Americanized, so it does like because I only saw like maybe 2 or 3 episodes towards the beginning of the first season before I kind of went, no, I don't think this is for me, because I really love this brand of like deadpan, really low key humor. I felt that when I watched the TV show, I'm like, okay, we're getting a little bit Americanized here, and that for me, because I'm used to this one, was grating a little bit. But maybe if I gave myself some distance and didn't watch this for a while and then started the TV show, it might go better. But no, I get what you're saying. Towards the middle, I think it's after Peter has died, there is a little bit of a lull where, they've kind of exiled Nick, and they're kind of, waiting around for like the ball to happen. And I do agree that bit can sometimes, you're like, there's been so much going on for the movie that all of a sudden we kind of hit a little bit of this lull. But then I think they bring it back once, we go to the ball. And of course you've got, the whole movie we've heard about the Beast. Vlad's like great big nemesis is the Beast, and it turns out it's just his ex-girlfriend, which is actually quite kind of funny. And then you've got then you've got the werewolf fight at the end. But one thing again I did like, and again this brings it back to, I think they have a good balance of like drama and humor. I really like after Stu has been attacked. Oh, FYI guys, Stu is okay. He turns up at the end and it's all good. But when Stu is attacked by the werewolves and they think that he's dead, Declan, who has hated Nick this whole movie, goes and tries to like reassure him and like show him some kindness. But what's hilarious is he does it in like the worst possible way. He's all like, this is what happens when you're a vampire. You see everyone you love die from, and then he starts listing like in like really stupid ways to die. Like I think one of them is like falling asleep in a pile of leaves and having them choke your windpipe or something. And then, and then he's like, see, I made him feel better. It's like, yeah, not so much. But I do love the ending when you find out that, Stu is alive. He's become a werewolf, and the werewolves and the vampires kind of, come together and make friends. It's kind of cute, and it's kind of a fun little ending, a little note to end on. Because if anyone was going to bring them together, it would have been Stu. We love Stu. And yeah, I just think that's really fun. So I find when I watch this movie, because I love vampires so much and I love vampire fiction so much, I feel like this movie was really made for someone like me who can appreciate the absurdity of the genre and still love it at the same time. And, I think we have to keep in mind that, without this, we wouldn't have the TV show that you love. So we've got to be thankful that we got the movie first and that it was as good as it was and led to that. And I think, obviously, I'm guessing off the strength of this movie is that's how Taika broke into Hollywood and probably, got the directing gigs that he's getting now off the strength of this movie, which was just so good and so much fun.
Yeah, because obviously with the show, he's only really a producer, I think, by name. I don't think he has much involvement. I think it's more Jermaine Clement who's a bit more hands-on with the show.
Yeah, I think that would make sense because Taika's gone off to do, much bigger things now. But Jermaine Clements he still does his own thing. He's done voices in some movies. He did a voice in Moana a few years ago, and I think he still gets regular work in Australia and New Zealand. So he does all right for himself.
Yeah, because I think with Ratiti, I've not seen that much still, so I think I'm still on the fence whether his brand of humour is quite for me because. I quite enjoyed his 4 movie, but then that could just be because I think that sort of movie needs a bit of humour like that. Yes. So I think the lighter touches did make that movie quite fun. But I still haven't seen Jojo Rabbit. And
me either.
I know there's some other of his New Zealand films, like Hunt for the Wilder People. I still haven't seen that one. Yeah. So I do want to go back and check out some of his New Zealand work because it would be interesting to see his post-Hollywood stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think he's quite good in this. And I thought, this, as an actor and as a director, because he and Jermaine co-direct this, I think they're very good. And I've mentioned this off screen, but I do want to see Our Flag Means Death, which has him and Rhys Darby in it as well. And that's supposed to be quite good and quite funny. Because I think his humor works best. I haven't seen Jojo Rabbit, but I've seen both of his Thor movies. The first one, Ragnarok, definitely better than the more recent one. But I think, that his brand of humor, it works best in this. For me, this is my favorite of his that I've seen. But I do hear nothing but good things about Jojo Rabbit, so I would be very curious to check that one out at some point.
Yeah.
And see how he does. But I think that for this, he does quite well. And I think that now correct me if I'm wrong, but there is an episode of the TV show where these guys appear in it. Isn't it like a finale or something? And they have a vampire council or something, and they actually do bring these characters in. Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, no, there is. I forget them appearing in it, but you're probably right. It would make sense as a little nod to the film because
that would be fun.
I definitely remember that episode. It is one of the standout episodes.
How Viago came to New Zealand, and that's the part that Keith mentioned with the postage box being sent to the wrong place. But he followed a girl here called Catherine, and she is now an 80-year-old woman that he basically stalks. And towards the end of the film, it's so cute. He ends up turning her, and they end up getting together, and they have this really fun gag. So they've got him sitting with this senior woman. He's all some people are a little off about the age gap. They're like, what is this 80-year-old woman doing with someone who's 4 times her age? But I don't mind being a cradle snatcher. And it's just so cute the way they kind of subvert that vampire love that you fall in love young and you're young together for eternity. I just love that he turns his lover when she's in her 80s. Again, it's a nice little subversion and a little little parody on the vampire genre. So that's fun. Well, I think we've covered it most. It's not the deepest film or anything like that. It's just a fun little mockumentary, and it did give way for the TV show. But all up, Keith, what would you give What We Do in the Shadows?
Yeah, okay. Well, just because it's a first-time viewing, and like I said, I did have 1 or 2, it did lull in the middle, so I think for now I'll give it a solid 6.5. So. Okay,
fair enough. Fair enough.
Just probably, I'll rewatch it, and it might go up a little bit, but it's enjoyable, it's solid, so yeah.
Well, I'm very glad that you liked it. Was hoping for a slightly higher rating,
Yeah, I
but
thought
given
it
it's a
might.
first time watch, and again, I understand if you are used to the TV show and then coming to the movie, it's a bit of a change, and especially if again TV shows you've got more expansion for like characterization and things like that. So I mean, it's understandable. So for me, I'd give this an 8.5 out of 10 because I
Okay.
really love this film. I mean, I ever since I first saw it, and like I've mentioned in this video and so many other videos that we've done, I'm a massive vampire fan. I love vampire fiction. I love everything about it. So I love that this movie takes vampire fiction and very lovingly makes fun of it. I never feel in this movie like that they're talking down to the audience or they're looking down at the audience for liking vampires. I feel like they just want to show the absurdity of the vampire genre, which obviously a lot of other shows don't get the chance to because they're very serious vampire shows. So it's fun to see something a bit more lighthearted. So 8.5 for me. I would probably give the TV show another go, I think, especially because I see a lot of GIFs on Tumblr and the GIFs do look quite funny. I think, like I said, it's just that kind of jump of going from a show that is very much a New Zealand show, a movie that's very much New Zealand, very much New Zealand Aussie humor, that kind of deadpan, to go to a show that's a bit more Americanized and has taken the concept and made it a little bit more Americanized was a bit jarring. But hopefully, if you rewatch in the future, we can get that rating a little bit up. But I am very glad that you enjoyed this film because it is one of my favorite vampire films. And I think it's a really fun watch, especially around this time of the year, because even though it's not set at Halloween, you have the big masquerade ball. So you have, a bit of dress up, a bit of fun. It's got the spooky atmosphere. It's got, vampires. So it's a good film, I think, to watch around this time of year.
We do In the Shadows, the movie version. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Also, comment on which you prefer, whether you prefer this or the TV show. So that might be interesting to know as well. As I said, we're doing movies throughout October, so let us know some of the stuff you guys have been watching in the comments. Yeah, Rachel, if you want to plug your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on movies and TV shows, mostly 90s, noughties, and horror movies. I do have, hopefully by now, I will have some videos up for Halloween, one of which, if you give it a watch, you might see a mention of this movie again. And my Tumblr and my Twitter are linked through my YouTube, and Keith usually puts a link in the description, so come follow me everywhere.
Okay, thanks, guys. Keep it spooky, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.